All right, guys. Week 4. Wow. Um, hmm. uh, I have a good feeling about technology today. Feeling good. I am not going to touch this. Chris moved it back, so I can't. I think I must have bumped this machine, and that's why the camera just went zoop. Oh boy. Anyway, and so we went to a department meeting on Friday, and where we were trying to talk to other people and doing dual modality, and I had just done it the night before, so and you guys had just experienced it. But it was good. It's got a good history. We feel good about it. Last time it wasn't us, was it? It was Zoom.
Yes.
They weren't answering your phone or something.
It's still an issue with Zoom. We think it's on our side, but it's only with Zoom. That's the problem.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. It is, we are still good. Okay, so I'll start with a little bit of housekeeping stuff. What's due next time? I hope that the checklist was helpful, but I had at least one question, and I'm going to try to answer those, and hopefully I won't need to keep getting in here and adjusting, not because I'm mine, but because, I think we'd all like a little stability. So what I've done is created a checklist that I'm going to link to for the agenda each week, but you can go to it any time. It's in the course materials. We do checklist, and on our Google site, it says everything is. And okay, here's my disclaimer. First, most importantly, none of the course requirements have changed since the first week of classes. Everything's exactly the same as when you first came into the class. So don't think that you're needing to learn something new. Those renovations that I've been doing over the past few weeks, they're not structural. The bones remain the same. I think maybe I might be watching too much home renovation shows, but the bones are good or are okay. So basically all I've been doing is just shuffling things around. First, seeing if we can take our interactions out of DTL as much as possible, because I wasn't doing a good job. I'm sure other people can. I don't know. It's a mysterious space, that D2L. But some people can make it work. I think I've never heard of anybody, but I'm sure there are people that can. But I'm just not making it work. So as we said last time, we just moved everything out to Zotero because it's built to be accessible. It's a library. It's for your own storage, and then the blog. And there still are a few questions, but I hope to clear those up by showing you guys some models, some of your classmates. Basically, what's going on is, this is, again, on Friday, I do think we should offer more dual modality classes. I mean, those of you guys who are here via Zoom, is this good? Do you like this option? Yeah, I mean, you could do it in your jammies. But everybody's got such busy schedules, and I know, no, Sarah's not here. I think she's the one that's in Arkansas. None of you guys are in Arkansas, are you? No, okay. What we've got here is the online people who aren't here. Again, hello to the future, wherever they are. And then we have the live streaming people, and then we have the people who are here. So it just getting these moving parts to talk has been kind of difficult. So I think that we've got it, and what I would like to hear from you guys is keep those questions coming. So Katie had several that I think you guys also have that I'm going to go through in a minute. But here's what you have due, and link to the various things. So for next class meeting, and I'll update this each week. This is, I'll go ahead and put in here, 5. I don't know what that date is.
It's the 14th.
That makes sense, 7 days plus today. Thanks. Oh, happy Valentine's Day. Okay, so rhetorical praise, and we're going to talk about reading graphs, maps, and trees today, as well as graphs, maps, and trees, which I think several of us really liked. The maps part in particular, it's just really compelling. So your rhetorical praise, and then add to the Zotero group library your rhetorical praise, which will go in. Thank you guys for putting them here. You can put them in. You can put them wherever you want, I think. But it's just for me, for grading, it's a lot easier for me to find them here. There is, I'll talk a minute about the other stuff that needs to go in there. You guys are doing great jobs with those, and we'll present some of those today. I think Greg has one, and we lost her. Anyway, she has a...
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, there you are. Okay. We have, you have rhetorical praise, but it has a lot of really solid notes. I didn't know if you would, if you want to present it live, we'd love that. And if not, we have enough to work with too. So however you want to do that.
Either way.
Okay. Well, all right. Excellent. So the rhetorical praise, and then I'm just going to bang through these things because I think the examples will make a lot more sense too. So you'll always have rhetorical praise coming up. That's schedule that's here just to make sure it matches up. Group 2, reading graphs, maps, and trees. Come on. So make sure that matches. Yes, group 2, maps and trees. And then we'll continue that with group 1 the following week. And then DH presentations. So do the rhetorical praise, add it to the Zotero group library, which we'll talk about in a minute. The readings for next time are graphs, maps, and trees. Some more, or are we done?
I think we have the second part of that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we're just getting started. Graphs, maps, and trees. And then another chunk of emergence of the digital humanities. Seems like you guys are enjoying that too. It's a compelling way to think about the digital humanities, which I think complicates some of the ways in which other people have been defining it. But I think it's complementary though too. Oh my God, that coffee's bad. Or tea is bad. And then our DH presentations next time. We have Jennifer and we have Greg. Okay, Jennifer.
Yes.
I saw that you've already posted your screencast for that.
Because I was afraid I wouldn't know how to do it, and then I found out I did. So
okay.
I just decided to save it while I knew what was going on.
Smart. What did you use for that? Did you use Screencast?
Yeah, Screencasty with a Y on the end, I guess. Is that
with the Y? Okay, that was something Katie had recommended, I think.
It worked very well. It was much easier than a lot of other things I've done in my life. So, yeah.
Oh, great. So, did you just download that for free or?
Yeah, it was free. I downloaded it and really easy to navigate. I mean, like I said, I gave myself all this time because I thought that it could take a while, and it did not. And it actually shocked me at how easy it was. So, yeah, I mean, I just copied and pasted the link and gave it to you already, and so it was that easy.
Excellent. Okay. So, either way, I guess you don't care if you present next week or this week.
It doesn't matter at all to me, either one.
Okay. All right. We'll shoot for this week, and then depending on how much time we have, and Daniel's going this week, and then Greg, you're going to go next week. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And then for those, if you'll add your presentation materials to Zotero, this is so that we can all access your projects. They're going to be seeing your presentations, your projects Some of you guys, like Jennifer, will have created some like a screencast. Those of you guys who are not in this room or zooming in, you're going to give us a demo through a screencast or some other means, and it'll be useful if we can just pick those up here. So you guys will be looking, I hope, in everybody's folders and finding stuff. But yeah.
Just real quick while we're talking about this, the Tracy that was due that I have from last time, that and the project that I called dibs on, I've been putting that stuff in just library.
Oh.
So do you want me to move all that to, because now it seems we have folders for everything specifically. You want me to
Yeah.
so you can find it? So
Yeah,
that's okay.
This is in part to make it easier for me to grade, and also for you guys to be able to find each other's stuff, especially stuff that you present. You know, I remember you presented about blah 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 article. That was really interesting. I don't remember what it was, so they can go to the rhetorical précis folder. And also, as I'm grading, and I'll talk to you guys about grades in a minute. They can.
Dr. Carter,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, while you're on that, I have been trying to put my rhetorical précis for last week in the folder, and I put it over and I see it, and then when I come back to it, it's not there. So there has to be something on operator error end. It is in my personal library, but I can't get it to the group library.
Okay. Are you using the desktop version?
I have no clue.
Full version. Did you download it, or is it just, or does it look like this?
It does,
Now,
but I
Okay.
had to log in. So I had to create a username and everything.
So see if I can find it now. You mean like just search for?
well, if she put it in the folder and she said it went up and then it goes away, if it's still on your end, then the problem's on hers.
Okay.
So it has to be operator error. I just am doing something wrong.
So did you
Because
put
I
it?
put it in group 2 under
Okay.
rhetorical précis.
Okay, then let's see. Group 2.
That's all I see now, but I know I had it there last week, and then, of course, we're having technical difficulties.
Maybe it got put here.
And it would say T. George 7475 because they said T. George was already taken, so was George.
Okay. All right, and you don't think you put it? Let's put it in this folder. Nope. Okay.
No,
All
because
right.
I'm having trouble getting things in there. They're staying in my personal folder on Zotero, and I can find the group. I don't know. It's operator error.
Did she ever join the group? Did she ever follow that link that you sent out? Because if she didn't, she's not in it.
Did you accept my invitation tomorrow? Do you know?
That might be the problem. Where did you send the invitation out to?
Whatever address you have associated with the college. So I just picked the email from there. So
Okay.
I think if you don't find it in there and you have another email address, I can send it to both, because maybe it got stuck in spam or something like that. I think you're right, Brian. I think that's exactly what it is. It's not letting you interact.
Probably. Okay.
So,
Okay. So then should I just email you with my email address that I use all the time so you could resend it?
Do that. Yeah, and it's easy for me to invite people.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Other questions? Okay, so going back to the to-do list. And then DH presentations. Okay, and then finally, a couple more things. Class discussions. Thank you guys for keeping up with those. Those of you guys who are here, those of you guys who are here virtually, you don't need to do anything. You're done. You participated. That's class. And those who aren't able to attend live, just a little reminder that you guys in the future want to watch the whole thing which you have, and I'm seeing a lot of that post to your blog. And then again, just to make it easier on me, as it's all about me, there's a recorded class meetings. This will also help for our class, and we're going to pull from some of these today. Blog entry before meetings, and remember, those of you guys who are here don't need to do that, because this is the stuff that you will be presenting in class because you're here. And so we have, I'll pull a couple of those from the weeks. And then we have a blog in response to, and I've got some things to share with you guys on that. And we'll have week 5. We'll have weeks 5 soon. And then finally, it looks like everybody's keeping up with their blogs. There's Katie had a question about that, which I'll wait to respond to until I get to her questions. And then you have your 20 entries. Some of you guys have almost 20 entries already. So just make sure you're keeping up with those. We're shooting to have those done by midterm. So that is the goal here. Okay, let's get back to the agenda. So Katie's questions. Okay, Katie asked, feel like we cleared this up, but I think I'm confusing myself at this point. Nope, no. I think I received at least one other question about some of these. She says, I have my rhetorical précis for week 2 and 4. I'm in group 1, listed under rhetorical précis in the doTERRA folder. Do I also need to add them to in my folder with my name? That is, she's put it in this rhetorical précis folder, group 1. Does she also need to put it in her 20 entries folder? No. The 20 entries folder in bibliography is specifically for the assignment where you're gathering 5 digital humanities projects, 5 scholarly articles about digital humanities projects, and then 10 other sources. Those can be scholarly, those can be journals, those can be like other sites that you want to pull together. You're also welcome to put whatever the hell else you want to in those folders. Make it clear, maybe make a separate folder so that I'm looking at the ones that are as complete as an entry as possible, and have the abstract if it's available, and all have the rhetorical précis, which I'll talk about in just a second. But it's your folder, so put whatever you want in there. But also, it's your doTERRA library, so put it wherever you want, anywhere. So if you want to keep it in there, that's great. We'll all be able to see it. But also, we'll be able to see a lot of stuff. So we have a wealth of riches here. So, use doTERRA to keep track of stuff. Is anybody finding it useful otherwise? Are you guys doing the automatic punch button thing? How's it working for you, Abigail? You have a number of entries.
I have the icon that goes on my desktop, and for some reason I can't find the class, my folder for the class, but I use it on Chrome and it works fine.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else having any trouble with it? How about you, Bob? How's it going?
I don't know if I lost my horse or found a rope. So,
all right. Tell me about that.
it's all a new lingo. We're still trying to figure out, how this is all going to work at my school. So okay. I'm totally lost. So just, I'll try to catch up. If not, don't wait for me.
Well, wait a minute. You're clearly not the only person who is. I got an email from somebody else today too, who said, I just can't figure it out. I just can't figure out how to put anything on there. So, well,
I was just looking here and I don't see Michael. So I'm like, okay, I must not have signed up for this, although I thought I had.
Okay, that is on me. Let me make you a folder right now.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Well, all right, screw you. Get you a folder. Oh, well, no, we can't, because I don't know what my login right here is. So, but if you will email me, I will get you a folder. I think the problem might be the same problem that Tamara's experiencing. I bet you didn't get the invitation that lets you do the stuff that you need to do with it. Because maybe it didn't get sent, maybe it's in spam. So if you could email me and tell me what account you want me to send it to, then I will send you that. The other thing is if you are running into a trouble into a problem that you know how to name, like there are times that I'm so clueless I don't even know what to ask. But sometimes I think I might know, like I'm having trouble adding an item to a group folder. So I put some resources up, but just Google trouble adding folder to Zotero. And I usually pick videos. There are zillions of them. So any technical difficulties, that can usually help me through. And not everybody is super helpful. This course is about technology in theory. It is also about technology in practice because it's all around us. But I don't want the technology to be a barrier to you doing well in this class. So if you are having trouble using the mechanisms that we've made available, then let me know. Don't spend hours trying to figure it out. We will figure out a way to do together. Even if we can, do a Zoom call and I can show you the screen or something like that. But let's at least make sure that you've been invited in, Tamara and Bob.
Perfect.
Okay.
One other question. Does this work better on a Mac or on a Windows? Because I heard someone mention Google Chrome, and I'm like, okay, am I on the right thing? Safari.
What's your favorite browser?
Usually whatever pulls up on the computer.
I love it. Okay. Any of them will work. And
Okay.
I haven't heard, I'm using a PC right now and a Mac is what I use at home, and I don't really see any difference. And I think we're using Explorer right now. I usually use Chrome, but Abigail, did you choose to put the plugin on Chrome because it's easier to do that, or just because that's what you use, or?
I just use Chrome because when I was in undergrad, everyone said either use Firefox or Chrome, and Chrome tends to work better for me. So,
I like it because I use a lot of Google stuff, and it integrates well.
Yeah.
Because also the man knows everything about me now. I want to make sure it's super easy. Oh my gosh! I'm also one of those that says, "Do you want to hook this up to your Facebook account?" Sure. Let's do it. But
As far as what I recorded on earlier, what I was telling you, it's actually called Screencastify, and it
okay.
was for Chrome. I just want everybody to know that if you're trying to find it or whatever. Those are a
Okay.
couple of tips. So,
And that
Sorry.
is the one that I was talking about the other time.
yes.
It was okay.
It's the same thing. Screencast.
I called it Screencasty, but I was wrong. It's Castify. Sorry.
Well, Screencasty is
Okay.
cuter.
Well, yeah.
All right. All right. So more Kitty's questions. I'm sorry. Yeah. Do I also need to put it in a folder with my name? No. I noticed another student had a rhetorical précis for every entry in a Zotero. Is that required? Okay. Yes and yes. Let me try to explain why. I don't want this to be too cumbersome. I want it to be helpful, and it's supposed to serve a couple of purposes. It's supposed to be a resource for you to keep your stuff, because there's so much out there, and some of this stuff may or may not be as useful as you think it is. You may be pursuing some path and not another. I don't know if you guys have trouble keeping up with your resources while you're doing research for a project. You end up going down one rabbit hole, and then, all of that's not useful, so you get on another rabbit hole, but then you realize while you're in the second rabbit hole, some of the stuff that you dropped down the first rabbit hole is really useful, but where the hell is it, and that kind of stuff. So Zotero is helpful for that if you haven't. It's the best tool that I've heard of, that I've used for that kind of stuff. And it's a way for you guys to share resources together, and I'll talk again about the final project in a minute. But the other thing is, that, let me give you an example, and see if this helps. So Katie, since you were the one who asked about the rhetorical précis, I see that you put them all in here, and so I want to pull as an example. Is this abstract that you have here, did that come from their website?
That was, yes, it was,
Okay.
yes. And then I did the rhetorical précis in the notes.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I'm asking for. So if there's an abstract available, you know, as an abstract, or maybe they call it an about thing, then use it. There's no reason to recreate that. That is useful for you to scan and find out, okay, do I want this thing? The rhetorical précis, on the other hand, that is set up beautifully, minus a sentence or two, to plug directly into a lit review. I mean, this is like, this is exactly the phrasing that you would use in a bibliographic essay, for example. This is exactly the kind of phrasing you'll use in the theoretically informed environmental scan introduction that you do to your final project. And this also is something that I highly recommend that you guys do in preparation for your 595 paper or your dissertation. Joyce is not here, but she's been doing it for years. Instead of doing general annotation, she's doing these things. And then at the end, she's beginning to say, so, okay, so let's just go to this one. An SDH project for better or verse, Herbert Tucker, our use for the merit of scansion of poetry in order to more fully understand the poem itself. He supports his claim with an interactive resource that allows the user to scan example poems to practice close reading skills. The author's purpose is to convince the user of the worth of the scansion in close reading in order to understand and appreciate the beauty of poetry. Okay, so other than the author writes in an informal, that one right there in terms of the way they write, which is useful, I think, in terms of like if you are deciding whether or not this is reliable or the kind of source that you want to use in a scholarly paper, which is probably more useful for your undergrads or your high school students. But the rest of it is, now I've got some connections. Okay, this guy's, now I remember, is talking about this particular way of looking at poetry. Now I can connect it to other people who are looking at particular ways of poetry. But he's supporting his claim with this interactive resource that allows users to do this. Other people have this claim and they support it in another way, which this MIT from 1974 digital humanities project that with using the hyperlinks that I've been meaning to show you, that's one of those that might feed into contextually into those things. So I would like for you guys to have both an abstract and a rhetorical précis for those reasons. Project Vox, the exclusion of early modern female philosophers in undergraduate and graduate programs due to the lack of available scholarly materials available for classroom implementation. The group aims to rectify the claim by listening and describing women who have made strides in the advancement of philosophy. The author's purpose is to show the necessity of the addition of the work and these women. And so anyways, we've got, again, prose that we can pull directly out. It doesn't just say what it's saying, but like how it's saying it.
Is it okay on that? Like, that was actually, I'm glad you pulled that example. If it doesn't list a specific author, is it okay to just say like that project's team or however they phrase themselves?
Yes, I'm glad that we pulled up that example too. That happens a lot in the digital humanities because it's such a huge team and it might be a couple of universities. Yes, that's perfect. I think this also gets to this part. I'm going to go ahead and do this at the same time. So I'm about 2/3 of the way done with the grades to this point. You guys are all doing great if you've done everything. Those of you guys who are lagging a little because the technology is getting in your way, we will catch up. And once we find a place where we're all together, we'll be in good shape. So in the meantime, I've created a spreadsheet that is cumbersome, but I think it might be useful. So you in your 20 entries, I can tell from this you've got your blog. You've got I'm going to pick on Franklin too. Actually Jennifer too. Look at all those. Okay, so she has some digital humanities projects, some generic resources. This one is. That one, it probably goes in the rhetorical précis one. This is another website. So she's got Digital Humanities Quarterly, which is a scholarly piece, Electronic Beowulf, which is a digital humanities piece, and so forth. So what I do when I grade hers, which I've already done, is she has a couple of digital humanities projects. She needs 5. I check to see if the abstract is there. And if there's no abstract there, I assume that it's not there because the source didn't provide one. And in that case, you don't need one. Don't create one because you're creating a rhetorical précis, and that'll cover it. Got the whole citation in there, all the information, because you don't want to have to look for it later, but also we need that information as well. And then also, I'm pretty sure that the full version, if we download it, which is free, will also populate bibliographies in Chicago and MLA and APA and those kinds of things. So once you have all the citations there, then it should be and do you have the rhetorical précis and all the elements. So I'll look for those 5 digital humanities projects, 5 scholarly articles, and then 10 whatever else you want to do. That could be blogs, that could be that could be newspapers. Some of you guys are finding stuff in Chronicle of Higher Ed. I think Daniel had something from that. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for there. Okay, so Stephanie has, shall I pick that one? Okay. This is an article, Journal of Association of Information Science and Technology, and this is the abstract that they had, and then she has a rhetorical précis here for this, which is not, okay. Dissects a study that looks at how digital humanists make use of the digital curation of their research and how digital humanists must be further trained in the greatly unexplored area of digital curation. Supports the study's claims by examining interviews by humanists and how digital curation has impacted both negatively and positively their work. So again, you've got so you can pull from, okay, according to this source, they use these interviews and those of you guys who are, well, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So there's some examples. Participation before class. Okay, I'm going to pull on Stephanie's really quickly too and then we're going to get rolling. She's given me a blurb. She's put it in week 3. So it's from last time, but it feeds into this time as well. My weekly blog post discussing introductory tests covering DH prior to week 3 lecture, and pace of brevities for classes needed. I included under the note section a particular expert from my post that I would like most shared. That is one thing that I'd like you guys to do. It makes it easier to bring stuff in, and so she has, and this is something that I did ask you guys to do on the dual modality thing, but she deals with several interesting things, but this is something that I think is a question we can take into this conversation today too. This is from the introduction to the emergence of the digital humanities. Something that has confused me slightly of digital humanities is its origin. Is it really new, or is it actually decades in the making? Jones explains in his introduction to the emergence of the digital humanities, and that digital humanities has an origin in humanities computing that tracks back decades. However, Jones draws a line between humanities computing and digital humanities, and that the digital humanities emerged between 2004 and 2005, not as a rebranding, but as something more, something new. This something more is a consequence of something else, what Jones calls the end of the cyberspace era and bursting of the dot-com bubble. A collective digital culture flew out of the scene. Social media networks began. Google came onto the scene with digitizing Google Books and their own mapping systems. There was the introduction of geospatial tools, GPS and GIS, and the smartphone soon began reign. We ourselves began digitizing a whole way of life changed forever. It seems fitting that culture is what will shape this new era of humanities. Culture always does. DH is a response to cultural changes, as Jones says. Jones can't and won't give us a singular definition of DH. I appreciated that. It does say it falls under the big umbrella, which some people have argued against, and we have announced a rhetorical précis on that for the digital debates and the digital humanities. And also, I think Lonnie's one dealt with that too, where the field expands and grows as humanities and computing communicate and work with one another. Jones makes it clear that this umbrella allows room for these two arenas to feed off of one another, meaning it allows to the analyzation of something such as 18th century documents via digital lens with computing and data, and also allows room to study foreign digital cultural objects such as video games. And that's his big contribution, I think. He's got a number of contributions, but for us to really think hard about new media as an object for digital humanities is important, because these are humanities projects. The two-way street. We can take the digital into digital humanities, and then the humanities into the digital. We must be defined, but I see how to begin, at least to meet how new branch emerged. There's no singular facet that brought about change. Rather, it's a wave of cultural change that occurred, as small moments in our history that accumulated into something more, which has allowed us to find new perspectives to learn and study the cultures and their workers. If you took the last couple of paragraphs, the words I read in this week's introductory text covering DH have started to answer some questions I've had regarding digital humanities, but I think the best way to really understand this emergence is to see it. I've started seeing many digital humanities projects, and now I'm in the midst of visualizing the meaning of digital humanities. Has that been helping you guys seeing them as you're searching for them? Does it help you to, in what ways? How is your understanding of digital humanities beginning to shift and alter based on what you've seen? What maybe has stood out thus far that you haven't, that you're not planning on presenting to us?
So far, when I've been looking and just trying to find, basically to get an understanding of what's going on, what I'm finding, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it. The different projects, I'm seeing different people's perspectives of it. And so the digital humanities is still not a defined concept, so people are still trying to define it and navigate it, and so it is still actually emerging. So then I don't feel so lost. I don't feel like I need to know the answer, because I don't think anybody knows the answer yet, because it is still so new.
Yeah, well, some people think that they know it. Some people are very, very sure, and I really care less about it. I'm going back to that argument about, from the Supreme Court decision. I'm poor and I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. I think we just know it when we see it, right? I'm not really that concerned about deciding, okay, whether or not that's a digital humanities project. Is it doing something to help us understand or teach the humanities? Then it is. And anyway, so what tips do you guys have? Those of you guys who found a treasure trove of things, what tips do you have for what did you use to find those? What are you finding stuff?
Well, I only have 2 projects. I didn't write the précis for them yet, but I wanted them in. I'm finding things specific to my interest. I just put the word project. Right? I found a Tolkien project. I found a cyberpunk project. Put an author you like and put the word project, and you can probably find something.
So you don't even put DH. You put project.
DH actually was limiting. It wasn't help. Like science fiction, digital humanities was really complicating the search results. Like and it's not even a cool rabbit hole. It's just if it was, it's still complicated.
Yeah.
It was just references to how digital humanities contain science, and it was once thought of the realm of fiction. Like that's the search.
Oh, okay. It's not projects. It's about arguments about. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hey, that's a good one. Anybody else have good tips?
Jennifer had a good tip before we connected to class. We were discussing a little bit before we logged on, but Jennifer, do you want to say what you were saying about finding specific kind of threads?
Which part?
Just instead of just typing in, I was just saying
I would Google the whole thing. Yeah. So for me, I'm trying to stick with one theme, and which is what I teach anyway, because I thought I might as well, really associate this with what I have to do anyway. And so I keep, Googling digital humanities Beowulf or digital humanities Anglo-Saxon, and then, eliminating things that are just peer-reviewed journal articles about just, Beowulf or Anglo-Saxon Life or whatever, and making sure that I only like look for things that are either projects or people discussing the digital humanities aspects of it. So I don't know.
And you found a ton of things. So that's been working out really well. So just general Google searches.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thoughts before class. Again, it was for last week, but I think that it's something that'll feed in, I think, well to this class. He said it was an interesting week. I appreciated everybody's contributions, even though we had to power through those technical difficulties. But I'm still thankful to be there. And he was reminded of some kind of housekeeping things. Let's see, a couple of rhetorical crises were presented. I found Lonnie's pretty interesting, but I didn't fully understand the importance of differentiating between the house and the tent metaphors, so I'll have to look more deeply in that. It talks about the series of digital humanities definitions, and he also likes the Digital Humanities Manifesto. So, so that is mainly for the people in the future, but also to a reminder to you guys that that is one last thing we have to do. If you guys will post it in the rhetorical précis folder, just because it's easier for me to get to and because it'll be easier for them to get to. You know, I'd like for them to be in whatever group you're in, but it's not going to mess up my grading that much if it's not. Let's go back to this rhetorical précis. I'm looking, does it have, I'll put the title and what book it came out of. Did it come on time? Is it accurate and informative? Do you have a Zotero entry? That's, how many of you guys are posting this on both your blog and in Zotero? Okay.
But I put it in the wrong spot, so I got to move it yet.
Okay. Katie, is that cumbersome?
No, I like it better, like putting it up in my blog because I'm linking which I'm probably doing wrong, but I'm linking it to that blog post because then you can, I think I am.
Yeah, you are, I think.
Okay, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but it makes it easier for me just to find everything.
Okay, so I can just as easily get that information from your blog post so you don't have to duplicate it in Zotero. So if you want to make a blog post and say that's your rhetorical précis, I can go to your blog and get it. All right. If you deliver your presentation in class, you don't need to have notes. Many of you guys have notes. I guess maybe in some cases those notes are for you. If you don't present it in class, then they need to be a little bit, you know, they need to be thorough, and several of you guys have thorough notes, and Katie, you've got thorough notes and presenting in class. Hopefully those are helpful to you too. I mean, they're very helpful to, I think, anybody who's coming after you. They're certainly helpful to me. Okay, blogging. Blogging, I'm just checking, are you blogging bi-weekly? I think most of you guys are. That's another question that Katie asked.
Sorry, guys, I'm that student.
No, I'm sorry to say your name. Katie, you were asking questions that everybody else wanted to, I mean, don't you guys want these answers? I mean, yeah, you were not the only one asking this question. You were the one who thought to put them all in a list that I could then pick from. She said, I know we're meant to do blogs bi-weekly about our readings, and also you can do it about other things that come up. Maybe you run across something really, really cool that you think definitely contributes to our class discussion, but you don't know where else to put it. Do we need to include individual entries into under our Zotero folder, even if we're not counting it towards the Zotero, the 20 entries? No. If you want to make an entry for it, yeah, put it in your own folder or in your own library, just keep it on your blog, however you want to do that. You don't need to catalog those unless it's useful for you. All I need in that 20 entries folder is the 20, 5 digital humanities, 5 scholarship, and 10 other. So if you want to put more in there, fine, great. If not, then don't. But yeah, you don't need to develop a Zotero entry for everything that you do. Just some things that I have to grade, like
yours grade in a separate category, like your rhetorical précis, and also so other people can easily access that, and your digital humanities project that you present to us in that. So
could you just clarify then what goes into our blog? I've been struggling on that.
Sure. These are in real time kinds of things. So they needn't be in depth. They're relatively short posts. They're informal posts. So, for example, the post that you wrote, Greg, in response to the how to rob a bank, that's what I'm looking for. Or maybe you ran across, or maybe something that somebody said in class really, oh, that's really interesting, and so you really start to pontificate across that. Lonnie was talking about sometimes the damn things digital humanities is supposed to be a house, sometimes a flower, sometimes a tent. She could do a post on that. These are just sort of musings. Yeah, I mean, what have you guys written about that's?
This past one, I had a little rant about one of the chapters that we read about inversion.
Ooh, okay.
So I was like, I don't know how this would do that.
Give me a preview. Give us just tantalize us. What's a trailer? Everybody want a trailer for Daniel's rant?
Well, for the inversion, I kind of criticized, like who has access to this technology, and
He just sort of says, I'm not going to talk about that bracket.
and he doesn't, well, what about the older generations who can't have access to this technology? And he makes assumptions about, well, people play video games. Not everybody plays video games. Not everybody.
Not me.
And so I just kind of went on a rant.
Okay.
I was thinking about my grandmother, and she barely can. She knows how to use her TV, and that's about it. So, older students.
That's a perfect place for that kind of stuff. And
I asked a lot of questions.
So, Dr. Carter, am I hearing you right that it's kind of like a journal entry? It's every other week or more than that, where I'm just kind of going over and dissecting with something that we've read or something that has to do with digital humanities, and I'm just giving my thoughts out there on that.
Yeah. Just giving your thoughts. Maybe there's something like in the news that you ran across that maybe isn't about the digital humanities, but you're thinking about it through the digital humanities or something like that. This is just sort of a place to keep an fresh conversation going. So a lot of these things that we're reading, like the debates in the digital humanities and some of the stuff that we're reading in Reading Graphs, Maps, and Trees, came from blog posts. And I guess because they're fresh out there, maybe somebody's going to pick up his rant. I don't know, but maybe. But these are for us to check out and comment on, because we're going to be exposed to other conversations and others' perspectives that maybe you're not being exposed to in class. This also means that the people who can't be here can respond to you. And so you can respond to course conversations, you can take a piece and run with it, or you can pull something else from somewhere.
That's good clarity. I appreciate it. And I tell you, I've enjoyed reading everybody else's and kind of, seeing some of their takes on things. And two, I'm glad that you introduced it to us, because I can see I can use it in my professional capacity in the future. So I'm excited to get to understand how to work a blog.
So what form do you think your blog will take in the future? Is that going to be the superintendent's musings, rants from the?
Yeah, maybe something like that. Rants from the superintendent. Yeah, something more positive and motivating.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's really wonderful about the blog one of the frustrating things is that it organizes the newest stuff at the top, but it's really, most useful for things that are, event driven. So, a game's coming up, so-and-so won an award, that kind of stuff is really helpful. But also it's a really useful tool for, a lot of people like, a lot of the posts that I write are me thinking through issues about race here in this area, which is like, some of it is maybe useful for my research. Some of it is just stuff I'm trying to work out,
my wonderful family, who I adore very much, my aunt still says, "Boy, that's mighty white of you," and and I don't talk to her about how racist that is. And so because I'm a coward, so I always talk about where that comes from, because she doesn't mean anything by it. But anyway, so I put it on a blog. I don't think anybody reads it, but anyway, but I also want you guys to not be speaking into a vacuum. So I'm glad that you're enjoying commenting on other people. I am too. And a question came up during class that I may not have answered before I think we were all logged on, is how am I counting the comments? Because I'm also asking you to comment every week. I'm keeping a tally as I go around and comment on your stuff. So that'll take me a little bit longer to do, but I'm just keeping a tally that way. Have you guys had trouble getting posts on other people's blogs, or getting posts that you think are there on your blog? Do you want to share your experience, Brian?
Yeah, I just mentioned I didn't know by default they have to be approved. So for the first week I had mine up, some hung out in limbo. But now that I know, when I get an email that someone commented, I know to automatically go in there and just approve it. But I commented on somebody's recently, actually today I think, that didn't require that. So there's got to be a way to shut that off. So I'm going to try to figure that out in the settings probably tonight as a way to just bypass, because I'd rather delete something that's, a bot put there or is terribly offensive. I'd rather delete it a day or two later than leave someone hanging for like a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just
because I didn't know.
Okay. Okay. Final projects. We spoke a little bit about this last time. With all the technical problems, I just don't know how far we got. But I also want to talk to you guys about it, because let's look at the calendar. We're already in week 4, so your final project, which I'll talk about again in a second, is going to be due on the 12th week. So week 9 is right before spring break, and then spring break, and then week 10. I'll put dates on these, but we're going to do a peer review your midterm project, and then, which is the final project, and it was a draft, and then we'll do conferences with me on a draft, and then we'll figure out what we need to do with that other day. We may need to do some more, come back for some more readings or something like that, or maybe just extra work to work on your project, and then you'll present them. And so we'll also talk about that. So your final projects, just as a reminder, before I do this, how many of you guys think you know what you think you'd like to do for it? Okay, Katie, can you tell us what that is?
So I'm a nerd, and
Welcome to the club, right?
we're all nerds in different things, but my particular brand of nerd is like Victorian literature, like Jane Eyre, Jane Austen, hence the Eyre and Austen blog name. So I realized a lot of the things I like are about different Janes. And so my idea is kind of a timeline, but it'll have like different Janes throughout literature or different time periods. And it'll be like kind of a click through where you can like click on the image, or however I figure out how to technologically make this work. That'll bring up like different things about that particular person. So either the literature that it's associated with, or what was happening culturally at that time in that area, or if I can figure out some type of like link to interactive maps or something of that region. But just like seeing like, when you have something even just as like small but similar as the first name, like throughout time, the differences of what happens to that person or that, that name continuously.
Okay.
In terms of the differences.
Yeah. Tamara.
So this is actually thanks to Katie, because we're in another class together, and she realized that I was commenting a lot on women in our literature that we were reading. And so I think I'm really going to look at the different perspectives of women as history progressed, and especially the views of women in literature, um, like body image and social expectations, and connect it somehow to girls' addiction to Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram, and how people perceive them because of their social media use, or how they perceive themselves or others. I don't have it quite worked out yet, but the idea is really thanks to Katie.
Women writers. Okay, okay. I love it. What else?
And I'm sorry, I keep having questions. I'm
No,
slower than
please.
everybody else. But so on that first part where it talks about the final project, it says with one or more of your classmates. And I guess I've been stuck there in trying to get past that. So we have to do it. We can't do it by ourselves. We got to go out into a team or.
No, Greg. Thank you for asking that. That was the next place I'm going. As you guys, first of all, I know how scattered you are. I wanted you guys to do it together because digital humanities projects are typically done together. But I also know that you also have some very specific interests that may not overlap, or so.
And I don't mind doing it together.
No.
I just don't know anybody.
Right. So you can do it alone, no problem. I will reduce the heft of it a bit if you're not partnered up with anyone, but probably just by like a quarter, because those of you guys who collaborate with people know that it's a lot of work to collaborate with people. So, so I can tweak the kind of parameters of it a little bit. But you're welcome to work alone if it's easier, and especially if you have a very specific idea, like the Jane project is a very Katie Brand project. So you've got the vision for that. But if you have like a broader idea, like Victorian literature or something like that, then you can maybe see if you can partner up with somebody. What we'll do is we'll kind of keep doing these sharing things, and as people say, I'm really kind of interested in this sort of vague thing, and that's interesting, maybe you can talk to them about it. But and especially if you're not quite sure what you want to do yet, but I think as people share what they're going to do, and I've share as we talk a little bit more about what this is going to look like, then we should be in. It'll be easier to decide what those kinds of things are going to do. And the other thing related to what Katie said is the basic project is a multimedia exhibition, which can be done, a website, a Prezi, or something like that. What Katie's visualizing is something that sounds like more interactive, that might require technology that you're not quite familiar with, that we'll probably run across. So if you have in mind more of a digital humanities project, then this might be at its baseline, then do that. But you don't have to build the digital humanities project. We can work together about what might be out there. As you're doing your research, you'll discover maybe, there are a couple of tools that I'm just fascinated with, but I don't know how to use them, that have like a map and a timeline that screw up at the same time, and you can go through history and over space. I mean, this ties to, I think, what you want to do. So the introduction then could talk about what this project could do and what projects like it look like. And then this is sort of how a startup grant works. And then, rather than have it actually work, it could be what's called a wireframe, which is basically a prototype of what it might look like. For me, it was just something I built in PowerPoint, and there'll be a little square here. That'll be the window for the or whatever. So don't let any apprehension about not understanding or not even knowing what's out there, because we can never know what's all out there because it's so fast.
dream, imagine, and then we'll make the multimedia exhibition fit that. I love the James Project, and I love the Women Writers Project.
I know a lot of us are teachers, and I was talking to my like campus technology guy.
Oh, she's already collaborating.
Really nerdy, in a different nerd zone, and I've just been telling him like, this is kind of what I'm looking at. Do you know of any programs that would kind of, you know, that are user friendly, that might do something like that? So, you know, if you have that on your campus too, that's a good resource.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's how we got our program, our project done. Was I spoke to our academic IT people. And, yeah, we can do that. Let's do that. They get excited about it. And Daniel, you know what you're doing?
Not right
Not
now.
quite yet?
I have an idea. Like I've been this past semester and over this summer or winter break, I was thinking about like Irish working class and
Ooh, working class now.
A specific Irish singer, Bill Linnet and Lizzie, and his like biracial background and working class background, and maybe putting together something that looks at, you know, the history in that time frame when he was alive and connections to literature and everything.
Okay.
Something with that, maybe. Not sure right now, but I'm kind of stuck on that aspect personally.
All right. Okay. This is very exciting, and this is more than I was expecting. The baseline of what I'm asking you guys to do is just a multimedia exhibition that's going to showcase digital humanities projects that are within the zone of what you want to do. If you already know what you want to do, then we will tweak this so that it's more of a it's more of a your introduction will still exist. It'll be an environmental scan that okay, what kinds of projects are out there that I might use for my Jane project or my Thin Lizzie project. You know, projects that deal with music, projects that deal with you know, Irish pop culture, projects that deal maybe with American pop culture, but they're doing it in ways that you really want to do. People, maybe if timelines are important or geography is important, some tools that are doing some things that are totally unrelated that you think might be able to bring that in. So that's that collective introduction where you're going to theorize and contextualize your project within these larger conversations. If you don't have in mind like a new project, and let me back up for a second. That kind of thing, that environmental scan, what's out there and why this needs to be out there, that is the first part of a grant for NEH. So if you're wanting to go that phase, let's do it. I can support you through that. I got one of those grants. I did some evaluation in Washington, D.C. for those, so we can totally do that. But if you'd rather build a resource that maybe something, maybe a series of digital humanities projects that you know, might be useful for your students. I know that Joyce teaches a lot of, it seems like Gatsby comes up a lot. You know, they're, or she could do something on the 20s or something like that. Or maybe something more generally on American literature or men in American literature, or, you know, or empty depictions of the wealth in America, or the American dream or something like that. So in that intro, draw from the course text to help theorize that, you know, but also from the digital humanities projects that we're looking at. And again, those don't have to be directly relevant. They just might have some kind of thing that you kind of think that your project might productively do. And then your curated selection of DH projects with a brief summary of the project as it relates to the singular theme. So if, for example, you decided that you wanted to do a bunch of visualization tools, you don't have a theme, but you really like the idea of maps, like mapping Islamophobia, and maybe some others, you would then theorize, I think, the idea of mapping, and you probably would draw from Morietti and draw from Jones, and sort of theorize mapping, and then pull on some maps that you think are pretty cool. And then you have a curated selection of those visualization tools. You know, here's what visualization tools do. Here's some examples of some visualization tools, and theorize those and explain those. And here, these are like, this is like this project in this way, and this project like this way. You can see why this is towards the end. So we'll have done a lot at that point. So the next thing you do then is a curated selection of DH projects with a brief summary. So you've mentioned some, and some of these, as we spoke last time, Brian, can be projects in your intro that don't exist yet. So you can't really show those. But in your curated list, then you have a link to the DH project, and then a description about it, maybe a little rhetorical précis. If instead of doing an exhibition of those that already exist, you're wanting to build a new one, then we can tweak that section to accommodate. Because if you feel like you are far enough along that you really want to try it out, then let's dump that curated selection part and do something else with it. And then an annotated list of resources. Again, these mimic some of the stuff that, and bios. So the baseline is a website with an introduction, curated selection of pieces with a little summary as it relates to your theme, like a catalog of objects in a exhibition at a museum, and then an annotated list of citations of resources, which you will have collected in your 20 resources, or other people will have done it as well. So, yeah. So,
and did I hear you correctly? If I don't know how to create that, I can put something together that shows what I would create if I knew how to create it in a PowerPoint or a Prezi or something like that, and walk through what that would look like.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, that's how the grants are done. Like if you're getting money, like I did on, at some point I'll talk about the Remixing World Texas project. It's often too, and this project that you were interested in, Brian, that didn't quite have, is not a thing yet. In order to show what you want it to do, but to do a little, if they're called wireframes, you know, this is what it'll look like. It's static, and then we just kind of, you know, talk through what, you know, maybe put letters on A, B, C, and, you know, what that is, and then describe what those things do. So yeah, if you're thinking in terms of a digital humanities project, then yes, perfect. But you don't need to. You can just do a catalog of what's already out there on a particular topic. So either way, I want this to be as useful as it can be and as flexible as it can be. My goal is for you guys to know a lot about digital humanities, but to take what you know and apply it to what you care about. You know, the things that matter to you, the things that you think are interesting, and also think about what the digital humanities can do to make them cooler or help you learn more things about them that you don't already know. So, Greg, do you have some ideas of what's your favorite stuff? What kind of things get you excited in literature? Or are you?
I don't want to embarrass myself by saying, but I will, since you asked, that I like the Western pulp. I like Western fiction. You know, I like the old Zane Greys and things like that. Yep.
I am certain that there's work done on pulp novels, on westerns. I know on dime novels, I mean, we saw a lot of this coming up, I think, in that first chapter on the Raps part of Morietti's thing. It's looking at mainstream literature, and that, yes, let's look at that. And so they may not be anything that's looking at this at your specific most interested authors, but there might be others that are looking at Westerns more generally, or Western culture, or you know, the Wild West as depicted in, I'm very sure, you know, popular novels, maybe, I don't know if it's true, it wouldn't be true crime, but it wouldn't be, you know, one of those little short collections of short stories that were popular.
I swear there's a project now that you didn't show us with Dr. Stewart that they're literally scanning these dime novels, these westerns now.
Then
There's one. I can't remember the name, but I could swear last week or the week before we saw it. You didn't show us that it had Dr. Stewart.
Dr. Stewart has done tons of research on dime novels, and so that would have been her. Yeah. Do a little search, see what comes up, and do you have Dr. Stewart?
I do. I had her last night.
Okay, yeah. Well, if you get a chance and you're not finding anything, let's hit her up and see what she thinks. I'm sure she has ideas. And if you run across digital humanities projects on stuff on that, she'll be very excited.
Thank you for the help.
Absolutely. Anything else? Okay, week 4. Let's do it. Let's take a little break first, and then let's get into this conversation. I think we'll start, actually, even though it's down here, Daniel, we'll start with your digital humanities presentation. All right, so Daniel's got the floor. Hit it.
All right, so the digital humanities project that I found was this project by students at Boston College. And what they did was they took James Joyce's collection of short stories called Dubliners, and they turned it into a digital Dubliners where they include videos, news clips from the time period, and they make it very interactive. So really the stories come alive, and whoever's reading the stories can really feel like they're in that time period and really get a better sense of what the stories are about. So what I wanted to do is play this video. They have a website, but it's a WordPress website, and they have some information about the digital book itself. And one thing just up front that I found was an issue with it. I really like it, but I think, unless I'm just technologically incapable of doing it, I found out that it seems to be only downloadable through iBooks on an Apple computer or some kind of Apple product. So I downloaded it on my iPad, and I haven't had any problems with it. But I wanted to show you guys a clip of kind of the project and how they're describing it, and then explain how it works a little bit more. So this is about 1 minute and 56 seconds.
Welcome to an exciting new reading experience with Digital Dubliners. Digital Dubliners is produced by the students of Boston College. It guides you through Joyce's 15 classic tales of Irish life in a way that will inform and delight. Because the book is fully mapped, annotated, beautifully designed and illustrated, Digital Dubliners will open up for you each of Joyce's enigmatic stories of Ireland's capital city at the turn of the century. Every story is presented by one of our student editors giving their personal take on the tale, while each offers contemporary maps, newspaper reports, and in this case, actual archive film of the 1904 Gordon Bennett Dublin car race that James Joyce attended and on which he based the After the Race short story. With Digital Dubliners, you can listen to contemporary recordings of the songs that Joyce loved and inserted into the stories, and view the sites that he knew so well. Unfamiliar places and phrases are comprehensively glossed and annotated. You can, of course, underline or highlight the text with ease. Critical essays explain the text in easily comprehensible language, while images taken from the period give you fascinating background information, while a richly annotated bibliography guiding you to even more in-depth readings accompanies every story. Knowing the cultural and historical background to Joyce's stories hugely enhances our understanding and our enjoyment. And that's why Digital Dubliners, written by our students out of their own experience, presents colourful and comprehensive accounts of the Ireland of the time. But even in their use of today's technology, students didn't lose sight of the thrill of critical voices. So every story you'll find comes with office hours, where eminent Joyce scholars such as Professor Joseph Valente and Professor Vicky Mahaffey offer hints and clues to assist our exploration of Joyce's tales. Enrich your experience of Dubliners by getting to know the great author himself and the Dublin his stories arose from, by exploring the many extras in this free book, Digital Dubliners, a whole new reading experience. You can get it from iTunes today.
So it is a free book, and I mean, completely interactive. That one clip that they were talking about the race, not only does it have that video, I've got it pulled up on my iPad here. Not only does it have the video of the actual race, but it has a news clip over on the side that you can tap on and read that Joyce wrote about the race, his experience there for the Irish Times. So it's kind of cool to see where this short story comes from and how he experienced these events in history. So I found it very interesting. If you scroll down on the site, you can see a little bit more about the project, how they crammed over 300 odd images, 700 or so notes and explanations, 24 videos, critical essays, hyperlinks, interactive maps, sourced from contemporary newspapers of the time, sound, like they were talking about music of the time period, because he'll mention songs. And I don't know if you do this, but when I read a novel and they mention like a song or a person or a movie, I'll go look it up. You know, it takes time to go do that. And so they've done this all for you, where you can tap on it and go and view all of that. So to me, that's really cool. And yeah, it was conceived and produced by the students of Boston College under Professor Joseph Nugent. And also at Boston College, another digital humanities project I found was Joyce Stick, where they take Ulysses and turn it to a game, the novel. And so it's at Boston College as well. So I guess they have a huge Joyce following there. And so if you scroll through the website, it's just called digitaldubliners.com. You can see some more of those examples of the text that they're talking about, where you can highlight the text, add comments, and interact with it. And they have images of the time period, a clip of a professor talking about.
I don't think the name James Joyce should strike fear into students' hearts or adults' hearts. The name James Joyce is associated with a particular kind of challenge. It's a very rewarding challenge. People shouldn't be scared of rewarding challenges. People should embrace rewarding challenges. And, you know, in the case of Joyce, it's not an impossible, by no means an impossible task to read it. There are great levels of difficulty. I think that Dubliners is an easier read than a portrait. A portrait is an easier read than Ulysses. Ulysses and every other book on the planet is an easier read than Hemingway. But if a student or an interested person.
So you kind of, I mean, you get that, you know, classroom perspective too, a professor talking to you about, you know, the stories and the background and the difficulties with Joyce. And you also get the students describing it as well.
Hi, my name is Brooks. I'm studying English and political science. The story that I chose was Grace. Grace was originally intended to be the final story within Dubliners. And obviously, this isn't the case anymore, but it still contains many of the characteristics of any great finale. One of these themes that I pick up upon is the role of the Catholic Church within Dublin. I really hope you enjoy exploring Grace as much as I did.
So you have students who comment on it and who give introductions to each of the stories too. So I enjoyed that aspect as well. But I was going to just show you my iPad. You can just swipe through the text, and as you're reading the text, it'll have on the side and also in between the text pictures, information about the events taking place, historical events. Like here it says, people collected on the footpath to pay homage to the snorting motor. This is that story of the race. And you can see some of the images on the side when they mention certain things in the story, cultural aspects. They'll include images that you can tap on. Let me see if I can do, yeah, like what Dublin or what it looked like in Ireland during that time period. So you really get a sense of place and time with each story. So yeah, and one last image here. The city wore the mask of a capital. Got images of new and old images. So yeah, I thought it was a really cool project, and it's something that, I mean, I could see useful for those who are wanting to teach Joyce or teach, one of Joyce's stories. I've taught Joyce's story, Evelyn, before. I know other professors will teach it in like a short story class or in a survey of literature, and you could just have this as a way to go through and talk about the story. So,
excellent. Yeah. Do you guys have questions for them?
I know that you have mentioned, I think it's you, from the back of your head that you've mentioned a few times. Yep, it's you.
Okay.
Just your interest in Irish culture. Is that how you found this project? Is just looking for like specifically Irish DH projects, or
Yes.
do you remember?
Well, actually, I looked up Irish, or I typed in the author Joyce, but also another professor was telling me that University of Boston students were making some of these projects. So I just typed in, Joyce and University of Boston, and they had this one and then the Ulysses one as well.
Awesome.
But when I heard about Dubliners, I just typed in Dubliners Digital Humanities Project, and that it came up as that. So
The website that you've shown us is different than the book. Is that what you had on there?
Yes.
So and the same people are responsible? That put the website together as like a pitch for what they made, which was the book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The website is, like I said, a WordPress website, and the book is free as long as you can, have an iPad or some kind of Apple product, because I tried to download it to my PC and it didn't work. So that's the only problem. But yeah, it's in the iTunes store under iBooks, and it's free. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. That projects that make use of, there are a lot of educational projects that are not just created for students to learn from, but that involve students in the creation of, which is very cool. And there are programs that will enable, and I can't think of any of them right now, but that enable us to create books like these that embed audio files and video files and those kinds of things. So yeah, that's always a neat digitally managed project. Yeah.
There's a website for Boston College. They have the one for the Ulysses joystick up, and there's a video you can watch, and the students are talking about how they collaborated, like the computer science students collaborated with the literature department, and they made this game out of Ulysses. So
Beautiful. And that's good grant stuff too. Excellent. All right. Thanks, Daniel, for being the first one. Do that. This is down. Joyce has a visualization thing that she built that is on her blog. I'll encourage you guys to take a look at it. I'll just go to it really quickly, but I won't spend any time with it until she's available to go here. But she thinks visually a lot. She's like, oh, I can make sense of it if I do this to it. So we'll have her talk about that when she gets a chance. Let's see, some before class stuff. This one's on emergence of digital humanities, which I want to talk about next. But first, I want to talk about graphs, maps, and trees. Just to keep in our head, do we log on as an idealistic, this is when, in the video games, do we log on as idealistic versions of ourselves, or perhaps we take advantage of the mask of an avatar to be everything we are not? Do we upload our real selves, the self we desire, or our uninhibited self? Great question. Let's put that on our hats for that. Okay, so her question, Lena Verde, is, as Moriarty suggests, how does this perspective or knowledge add to our understanding of literature? I think that's a really good starting place for us to look at graphs, maps, and trees. So what did you guys think coming into this? I mean, it's a whole bunch of charts, and it's we're English studies people, so trepidatious. What did you first think when you started coming to this? And I got to warn you, there's a math equation in our reading machines book. So, what do you think, Tamara?
I'm struggling.
Okay,
I'm struggling because I am such a lit person, but I'm powering through.
Okay. Well, if you're anything like me, I mean, I knew going in that I could do this because I had been exposed to it before, but and because his voice is so charming, but I see these graphs and I see him interpreting them, and I just hear, sort of Buzz.
I feel like I'm back in algebra class, and I'm wondering how they found out what y meant because I'm still stuck at the 1 + 2.
Yep.
But I'm trying.
Yep. Yep. But we'll have a therapy session first, and then we'll get. I think we've all got math issues, yeah, or a lot of us do.
Yes.
What about you, Jennifer?
When I was reading the graphs part, I was like, what is going on? And then by the time I got to the maps part, I realized that he had basically, I do this too. If I'm reading something and it details a certain place, even if I know kind of where it is in the world or whatever on the map, I kind of, want to see where it is in relation to other things going on, other cultures happening around it. So then it really clicked in the map part, and I started to sail along and think, okay, I understand what's going on, what he's done here with this. And I actually like math for whatever, I don't know. Anyway, so I kind of thought it was brilliant by the map part, that he had kind of taken something. I mean, with Google, maybe, 10 or 15 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. But now when you can Google anything you want, how many times you're not supposed to have your phone out in the movies, but you're like, in a kid's, cartoon, and you're like, whose voice is that? Is that Tom Hanks? I've got to get my phone out and find out who this is, So kind of just always wanting, I pull up maps all the time. So I appreciated it.
What about you, Katie?
I initially, it just looks like math, so it was immediate terror, but then I'm also directionally impaired, and so it's a self-diagnosis. And so any type of map, I'm like, oh, I don't understand this, but it reminds me a lot of we've been, as part of, I'm in this mom's Bible study group, and we're reading this book called Inspired that it looks at Bible stories and breaks them down into more physical things about the stories. So if we're looking at the Battle of Jericho, well, Jericho, it says the city crumbled and they just, killed everyone in it, and women and children included, and blah, blah, blah. But actually Jericho was 6 acres, the whole town was 6 acres, and there were probably little to no women or children because it was a fortress. And so it looks at some of those background details about historically what was actually happening at the time. And so it made me think of that a lot about when we're looking at literature, qualifying some of the things that we're reading, instead of just listening to the pretty story, thinking more about the specifics of the background.
Yeah, interesting. How about you, Bob?
Well, at first it took me a few minutes because I used to date a woman with the last name Moretti, so I was like, hey, are they related or something? So I had to do a bit of research there. I was more interested in, his premise about the cycles in literature.
Okay.
How they just kind of go through, these, repetitive type of, rebirth, and then, a different thing comes in. But trying to make sense out of some of it, I was like, well, somebody still had to read the book first before they could, put it into this particular pigeonhole.
I do want to get into what he found and how he found it, because his premises from his earlier work is that distant reading, that these are things we can't see if we're looking at just the single text alone doing these close readings, but that we can see these rhythms over time, and that he broke it down to, okay, so genres changed over time, and so some of the genres lasted for 25 years and some of them only lasted for 5 years, and what is that, what accounts for that? And yeah,
that's the part that's scary. As a fan of the genre, that arguably, if you want to start, it's longer than 25 years currently been going on for, but if the premise is all genres have a life cycle, and it says that the likeliest explanation, this is page 20, is that its readers vanished at once. Basically, like they dropped it. They vanished. And there's reasons, you know, the political climate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a particular genre can evolve if it's big and robust enough, and there'll be like subgenres within it. But if you're a fan of a genre, it kind of makes you a little scared. Like, are we near the end of the life cycle of what I'm currently interested in?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean,
Yeah, you got that. We underline the same thing.
it's a lot cheaper to, books are certainly a lot more plentiful, and literacy is certainly more widespread, and it moves from an elite pastime into one a little bit more accessible. I do think it interesting, and I won't challenge him before we actually look at the merits of a lot of this stuff, but I did find myself asking, okay, man, you're making a lot of assumptions about how novels or any text, I'm teaching women writers class right now, for example. I mean, what gets preserved, what's going to be counted, you know, what gets published, you know, I think that there are a lot more things going on than political and readers' interests, because a lot of stuff just doesn't make it to the market because of, you know, social injustices and, you know, the oppressed positions of some people, and then also a lot of stuff that may have been really popular at one point is not preserved because it's seen as ephemera or something like that. So somebody has to decide that that's worth preserving. And then, you know, we have all these recovery projects. We see them in the digital humanities all the time. These things are not part of the data set because they're not part of the canon.
And the bit about the comedy reminded me of that, where he said about it, the reason the comedy isn't as popular is because it doesn't translate as well, but it made me think of like pulp novels, romance novels that are still very popular. People sometimes like their media just to get away from what's going on, and there was no discussion of like the escapism aspect of a genre like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If we're gonna start picking at it.
Well, let's just do that.
Just a little.
Okay, so let's do come back to graphs, but from what I was reading on a lot of you guys' posts, a lot of you guys dug those maps better, more than so, and I think that was what Jennifer was saying. So he begins with a question about literary maps. What do they do that cannot be done with words? Do maps add anything to our knowledge of literature? And he does explain, I think, that. But I have, just because I'm teaching Fun Home right now, anybody read Fun Home? So it's a graphic novel about, by Alison Bechtel. Anybody know the Bechtel test? Yeah, this is her, the one who says that, let me put the camera here. The one that says that movies have to pass the Bechtel test, women have to have a conversation without a man around that is not about a man. So she, this is her memoir called Fun Home. It's mainly about her dad. But she talks a lot about his lack of desire to stay in a small town where they had multiple generations of his family there, but also the way that you know, how it shaped him. Let's see. So he's this he reads a lot. He's worldly. He spends all of his time very fastidiously fixing up this funeral home that was a mansion in the very brief time that they had a kind of boom in this town in the 1850s, and then it just sort of dilapidated over that time. By the time he got it in 1962, it was just in shambles, but he had fixed it all up just obsessively. But
This narrow compass suggests a provincialism on my father's part that is both misleading and accurate. And I don't know if you guys can, that map right there. It's just those dots, not very far apart. This is just a few miles apart. And this narrow compass suggests a provincialism on my father's part that is both misleading and accurate. On a map of my hometown, a circle, this circle is just 1.5 miles around. My dad's grave, the spot on the Route 150 where he died near an old farmhouse he was restoring, which may or may not have been suicide. The house where he and my mother were raised, and the family, and the farm where he was born. Things that can happen with graphic housing. Another map up here, this is for his family. His mother's house, his brother's house, they're just all right around this line. Look at the lines and circles that we'll talk about in a second. His mother's brother, many of his relatives displayed similar reluctance to stray. When Aunt Sue and daughter grew up, they each built a house in the field between our house and hers. And then there's another one. Oh, this is the same thing. This is the same 1.5 miles that he lived and died in. Born, lived, buried, died within that circle. And I think it's also interesting, given that what the Morty was saying about how small towns were functioning, at least in the time that he's looking at, and it's just these 19th century pieces. What does he say that we can learn from maps? And how? What did he learn from a map? You have an example of that? What's going on, for example, in that first map on page 37, Mary Mitford, Our Village, from 1824. It's got our village, Lucy the talking lady, an old bachelor, an old village beau, Mrs. Moose, and Martha, a parting glance at our village. All this action happens there. Hannah, cousin Mary, the hard summer, Ellen, the first primrose, the great farmhouse. So all of this action. So the action's taking place around the center, and then there's some, secondary action that's taking place around the outside. The first ring is closer to the village, and that focuses largely on personal relationships. The second ring, its components more numerous, is the distance of a couple of miles, and that emphasizes natural spectacles, the frost and thaw, violenting the first primrose, plus some collective events like cricket and Maine. But in both cases, the road from B to C, B to S, so present at the beginning of the book, disappeared. He says that this happened several times, that narrative space is not linear here, it is circular, which is surprising. While mapping the 19th century genres for the Atlas of the European novel, I encountered all sorts of shapes: linear trajectories, binary fields, triangulations, multipolar stories, but never a circular pattern. Where on earth do these rings come from? And one thing he says in both the graphs and in the maps is that he's about not finding, he says that typically in our scholarship, we're all about finding an argument or a problem we can solve. And he says that the digital humanities, in the ways that he's using it in the graphs and the maps, open up problems that we didn't even know we had. So he's mapping, or he says later, diagramming these stories in space. Instead of using with the big data sets as he was with the graphs, he's mapping these. And they tell us different things. Let's see. This circular system of geography says there's a circular one and there's a linear one. I love this quote on page 38. John Verrill's The Idea of Landscape and the Sense of Place, 1730 to 1840. There's a sense in which an open field parish in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, which is what the one in our village is like, could be said to have different geography according to who was looking at it. Thus, for those of its inhabitants who rarely went beyond the parish boundary, the parish itself was, so to speak, the center of the landscape. So, for example, Bechtel's dad, he didn't move very far. I mean, he didn't go very far, but it's easier to make a circle around a very provincial, small community that's very homogenous, and he has a number of reasons for that.
I'm sorry, Dr. Carter. As you're talking, it dawned on me that almost by looking at these maps, you get a different perspective of the characters in the stories. If you're looking at stories or literature, if you're not looking at literature, you're looking at history. And so by looking at the map, you almost get a concept of what these people were encountering. But when looking at that map, you have to look at what perspective. So I'm thinking of Scout from How to Kill a Mockingbird. And so when she describes Maycomb, was it the same way that Atticus would have described it? So when she maps it for you, is it the same way that Calpurnia would have mapped it? And that's, I don't know, just as you were talking, that was clicking in my brain that you had asked why the importance of maps. And so maybe the importance of maps is to get a perspective of their life or their encounters.
I like it. I like it. And he says later the kind of tensions between the external and the internal that one can see just from one's perspective, especially if it's a first-person thing. Yeah.
One of the rhetorical phrases I looked at, David Hoover's Argument, Evidence, and Lens in Digital Literacy Studies, and he looks at, I think it's Ramsey and the machines.
Yes, yeah.
And kind of, he does some critical stuff, but it's interesting. He looks at Virginia Woolf's Slaves novel, and whether or not there are 6 different voices, just one voice.
Whoa.
And using computational, I mean, I could see we'd use maps to do that as well, to see the perspective of each character, to see if it's just one voice that is speaking, and one character describe everybody, or what you didn't see.
Oh my gosh. That is a trailer I definitely want to see that one. Let's see what timing we have on here. Maybe after we finish this, we can get to that. You have one for today?
I do.
Okay, and I think a couple of the others do as well. Yeah, what else? Does that spark anything in your minds that Tamara was mentioning about To Kill a Mockingbird?
Well, I was listening. Maybe it was that Daniel talking because we couldn't see.
Yes.
He was saying, now it's already flittered out of my brain, but on page 39, that he was talking about the rough circles or the wide circles, and then he was talking about the way the characters are strolling. Are they strolling at a leisurely pace? And so when you're looking at that map, like how does that map or how does that perspective handle how they're strolling? So, if we're going back to the Maycomb and Scout and Jem, they would sprint past Mrs. Dubois and they would sprint past Boo Radley's. So how are these maps designed? Are they sprinting past it? Are they leisurely strolling? Is it a rough circle around someplace because there's an obstacle or something to avoid? It was more thoughts.
And it's so interesting too, because of course I haven't read this, Our Village, but it sounds like the conflicts are small and internal. And I think in To Kill a Mockingbird, of course, these conflicts are like national, regional, these are like things coming in to disrupt this idyllic community. This is an idyllic community, so things can be circular rather than all wonky as the external, because he's saying there's no real external push. I argue that there's always an external push, no matter how local you get, no matter how old it is. But if we're just talking about the, people without any oppressed identity markers, then, idyllic is possible, I guess. But in these narratives, they are depicting, I'm sure, an idyllic story, which is not what To Kill a Mockingbird is trying to do. That's interesting. Okay, so yeah, narrative space is not linear here, it is circular. And so he says, so that's the problem. So what the hell does it mean? He says, okay, so on page 38 at the bottom, that spatial pattern as circles becomes at once clearer and more surprising by opening with a linear perspective and then shifting to a circular one. So he reverses that direction, making her urban readers. Our Village was published in London also to look at the world according to the older centered viewpoint. So this centered viewpoint, but this time an unenclosed village that lies in a most typical episode
the country walk. So we're then going to what Tamara was saying. So the young narrator leaves the village, and then he goes in a different direction. He reaches the destination charted on figure 14, turns around, and goes home, circle. The system is free to spread its energy in space. There's no external thing pushing at it. Extracts it from the narrative flow, and the only way to see it is to do it is with the map, but now that it now needs to be explained. And so, yeah, we've got the leisure that you're mentioning, and the gentrified space, which we were talking about. Okay. Page 42. I think this is when it gets really cool. The graphical distribution of urban centers on the basis of ordering principles. This is towards the end on Roman number 4. Ordering principle heretofore unrecognized the spatial division of labor. Towns provide specialized services, banking, administration, cultural and spiritual offerings, church, schools, so forth, which in order to reach as many consumers as possible are located at a few necessary central points to be consumed at many scattered points. The more specialized the services, the more central it also is. And on this socio-geometrical principle arises the urban hierarchy synthesized in this later, this particular thing. So, and he says a little bit later, we've got when it gets more urbanized, we've got these specialized centers that are in the center, unless we are reliant upon instead we're relying on them going to get the services in the center, or we're relying on the center to then deliver the services outward. And that it seems like the delivery happened more often earlier, and then now it's happening towards the center more. And it's interesting to think about that in terms of how everything is delivery right now, Amazon. Oh, and the luxuries on the outside. 3 spaces later on page 49, that interact and compete for attention. So once this idyllic space starts getting pushed upon by the external, the regional, and then the national and the political start to restructure. And so we end up with war memories, threats of economic competition, and then this re-emerging complexity of immigration. I just heard something sort of recently about, well, I won't go into that. It was, it's interesting about the way socialism works in Denmark and how it works in some interesting ways, and sometimes because it sounds like their homogeneity helps it work. Well, okay. Yeah, animation level loyalties. Well, there's so much to work on it. Okay. In the diagram, forces. Somebody give us a takeaway from this that we haven't already hit. There are several things for us to come back to, and I think we'll give more time to this book next time. But what's your biggest takeaway? That can be like a big idea, or it can be just something that you marked in this text that you thought was provocative or puzzling or problematic.
Going back to the was it figure 14, it's 37. There was another project. I was just trying to find it so I could put it in the chat to share with everybody. But there was another project that used, I wrote it down. It was a tool called Voyant or something like that. Voyant, V-O-Y-A-N-T. And you basically put in 2 words in a text, I guess, and it shows you like almost like a frequency chart, like when you're looking at volume levels or whatever, and it shows you where both of those things are set at the same time. So you can see like how often 2 things are together. So like, we closely associate 2 specific characters, but sometimes when you go back and look at it, maybe they only had a couple conversations, and those conversations may have been really important, but they're only actually in like touch with each other a couple times. And that kind of reminded me of this, like spatially, like we associate things kind of differently sometimes if we see it visually. And, instead of like making assumptions about maybe relationships between characters, you can see like visually how they came into contact.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about with this distant reading is we extract it somehow from the narrative, but in order to do that, we have to do some interpretation. But by laying it out in a new way, we can see things that we couldn't see previously. And the main thing is just what you're saying, it's the relationship amongst the characters, because it's less about where they are in terms of distance from one another, but how they relate to one another, and the outside world, or not relate to the outside world, I think. Well, we'll come back to this and talk some more about maps and trees, but before we do a couple more things to finish up here. Next time, before we leave this for now, you guys are going to be doing some rhetorical précis on reading maps, graphs, and trees. And in order to figure out which one you want, the titles aren't as useful as maybe you might want them to be. But it does have an introduction at the end that describes each of the articles. And again, we may have some overlap, but that's okay. I would like for us to say a couple of words about, before we leave that. In Graphs, Maps, and Trees, the text he's talking about literary history. He's talking about the history of books. And then he's talking about mapping narrative to look at a diagram of the relationships of one another. And I really want to talk about this waves thing. These are also things that rhetoric and composition people look at. We're not so interested always in narrative, but I did want to point out that Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives that is interested in narrative for a variety of reasons. Rhetoric and composition is sometimes about teaching. I'm interested in teaching as I have trained teachers, but our rhetoric and composition program and most of rhetoric and composition is actually studying the way people use writing and the way text shape our lives and the way we're shaped by text and the cycles that texts take. So the kind of thing we're doing in tracing literary text, we might do literary text too, but we would just as likely be to chart the movement of archival materials like these community papers, to look at the ebbs and flows of a particular activist organization, in as much as we have those texts available to us. So a text is a text is a text. So we didn't talk about rhetoric and digital humanities last time. I have a couple of rhetoric and digital humanities things to show you, but we'll put those off until next time. How many of you guys have rhetorical précis to share? Okay, Brian does, Daniel does, Greg does, okay, Jennifer does. Okay, so let's start with, I'm going to do Jennifer, Greg, Katie, and is that it? Okay, and then you two. Okay, let's start with, I want to hear this one. Maybe I'll put a timer on it, but I think it's because it's so related to graph, maps, and trees, and then we're going to pull from these guys.
I'll read what
Okay. Okay.
But this is under the section of criticisms of digital humanities. It's called argument, evidence, and limits of digital.
Having a hard time hearing.
Oh, do you want to come over here?
Yeah.
This is where the mic is. Oh, you can sit here.
Is that right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So this article was under the criticisms of digital humanities, and it's called Argument, Evidence, and the Limits of Digital Literary Studies. David Hoover, in his essay, argues that we need to be aware that the methods and approaches used in digital humanities can have limits in their usefulness. Hoover gives examples of these limits by looking at how Stephen Ramsey used computational analysis, the TF-IDEA, I think is his system that he used, to analyze word usage in Virginia Woolf's Waves and Stanley Fish's comments on argument, evidence, and methods in the digital humanities. Hoover's purpose is to show that digital methods should not supplant traditional methods, but should be integrated into the set of accepted approaches to literary text. Hoover states that traditional methods of literary criticism, like close reading, can benefit from these new methods. However, he believes that new methods, and this is quoting, tools and results must also be rigorously interrogated, questioned, tested, and replicated. Digital methods can provide new evidence and even new kinds of evidence in support of literary claims and can make new kinds of claims possible. They can also make some claims untenable. Hoover writes in an academic tone, focusing on rhetorical appeals and arguments, interrogating the claims made by those who use computational methods and offering rebuttals to those claims. This article would appeal to scholars who are familiar with both literary criticism methods and digital humanities tools, and how they can benefit each other and be integrated.
Okay, so since we're kind of short on time and we've got a couple others to go, I need to know the upshot. Is it 6 characters or 1 character?
I think he argues that it's 6 characters.
Well, that seems right.
6 voices. So,
I don't know why we need digital humanities for that.
Yeah. And he states, I think it was Ramsey makes some claims that are pretty big claims that he doesn't really back up with. And so he uses some other methods, like something called the what is it called, Zeta method, which measures consistency rather than frequency of word usage by both male and female characters. And both of these kind of converge to say the same thing when he reanalyzes the computational one, to say that there's probably 6 voices and 6 perspectives in this novel.
Oh, that's interesting. So it just gets verified. Okay, excellent. All right, so who among you that needs to do a rhetorical précis? Let me see. You see me? Okay. Who among you who needs to do a rhetorical précis hasn't done one yet? Okay. So tomorrow, can you go, and then Greg, and then we'll see what else we can fit in. So.
Certainly. Mine was from last week, and with all the technical difficulties, and then with me not being able to put it in. So it's from Digital History's Perpetual Future Tense by Cameron Blevins. In his article, Digital History's Perpetual Future Tense, Calvin Blevins asserts that digital history's cycle of evolution will only end when the historians successfully complete the dichotomous function of making a valid and supported historical argumentation blended with digital public history. Blevins supports his assertion by first chronicling the beginnings of digital history, then critiquing and contrasting quantitative history to current public history. The purpose of Blevins' article is to argue the cause of lack of progress digital history has made over the past 20 years in order to urge digital historians to focus more on argumentation instead of merely cataloging history in an online portfolio. While his tone throughout the article is mainly informative, he is critical when speaking of the quantitative historians, as they focus more on the numbers and statistical analysis rather than the humanity of history, which led them to make erroneous assumptions of both people and circumstances of the time period in which they were studying.
Okay, why'd you pick that one?
Because my undergrad was actually in history, and so I saw the word history and it stuck out at me. Okay. But then when I read it, I found it was really fascinating in terms of people studying history to make a snap or rash decision, which was what the quantitative historians were doing. And they were looking at it from a number standpoint rather than a humanity standpoint. And so I think it's always best to go back and look, and this is the point Blevins was making, it's best to go back and look at the people and the events and situations rather than just the numbers.
Like it. Yeah, get those people back. Excellent. Okay, thank you. How about you, Greg?
Yes, ma'am. Let's see. I picked the Humane Digital from the Debates in Digital Humanities by Timothy Burke. And Timothy Burke, he begins his article by introducing the question, whether are the humanities, and pairing it with the issue of defining digital humanities. In doing so, he offers that one possible strategy in tackling the two is to first discuss what can make intellectual work humane. He then suggests that humanities will be much less stable in the future than they have been in the past century. And he goes on to posit that if we are to defend the future of humanities, then with any confidence, It's important to concede that a highly specific organizational structure of the highly specific institution of American higher education is not synonymous with humane inquiry as a whole. So he's kind of put down the establishment against this emerging digital age. He then transitions and then transitioned to supporting his text by reflecting upon a conversation that he had with Louis Menand from Swarthmore College, where he teaches, during the summer of 2013. He held on to Menand's comment that the problem of humanistic thought in contemporary American life is not with a lack of clarity in writing and speaking. It's not with a lack of public intellectuals. The problem, he said, is simply that many of the influential voices in the public sphere do not agree with the humanists and the kind of knowledge and interpretation that they have to offer. And he uses that idea to springboard into his conversation about the anti-humane. He argues that the humanities are a variety of disciplines and subjects committed to humane ways of knowing. And then from that point of view, Burke then identifies what humane should be, and he offers that it should be incomplete, it should be slow, it should be illegible, playful, pleasurable, and extravagant. He notes that it should be incomplete because there is no technology or methodology that will ever allow us to achieve complete knowledge via humane inquiry. He notes that it's slow and that we acquire an understanding of the human experience through slow thought, gradual accumulations of experience, and discrete moments of insight and understanding. And even though he says that social media creates things that it makes helps users understand very quickly, it's the slow learning of life experiences that makes this possible. He goes on to posit that it should be eligible, in that the humane thinker is to be always skeptical in humane commitments of political and social projects that arise. And then finally, he demonstrates that it should be playful, pleasurable, and extravagant by producing an excess of perspectives and a variety of interpretations. And then he finally asserts toward the end of his article that digital methods, digital technologies, and digital culture are already good habits of humane practice and the best opportunity to strengthen the human temperament in a humanistic inquiry. The digital age offers an inevitable need for humane understanding. And I liked it and enjoyed reading it. And it gave me a different outlook on, getting a grasp on digital humanities myself. So I think it helped pull it together a little bit for me.
I really like this guy. Yeah, Burke, right?
Burke, Timothy Burke.
Digital humane, yeah. That's a manifesto. Yeah, several of these. Slow and yeah, excellent. Okay, so I think we're probably, I don't want to rush anybody else. So let's table these. Two things are going to happen next time. I'm done with the housekeeping stuff, and if we need to do any housekeeping stuff, I will set a timer. We have got to give you guys some more time to, definitely give you guys some more time to do some of those rhetorical crises. And I want us to have some good time to spend on the emergence of the digital humanities. I think it has, it says some things quite different from what other things are saying. I don't think it says anything counter to what we're saying or what other people have said, but it deals with, I mean, it's talking about video games. I know you're into this, Brian. Yeah.
My whole blog is just from that perspective. The one thing he couldn't have dealt with because it didn't exist yet, the stuff he calls there, his problem with definition don't have.
Well, yeah, like give us a hint.
Well, gamification is not a term that means what he says it means. It's a corporate term. Let's our office. Let's make work fun. That's what it means.
That's interesting.
He's talking about malicious publisher business practices. They're not the same thing at all.
Look at Urban Dictionary. That's interesting.
Yeah. Like he said with Ulysses, gamification of a text like that, turning it into something interactive and fun. And in the example used is Farmville and malicious business practices. This don't have anything to do with each other.
Huh. I'll be interested to talk some more about that. Yeah, so these books age fast, don't they?
Well, it's 2014.
Yeah, it's just doesn't seem like that long ago. Anyway, okay.
That's already out. It's way down. Posted that before that night.
Yeah, good. Okay, so take a look at that. Comment on that. So next time, emergency digital humanities. Finishing up those reading graphs or graphs, maps, and trees. And I also want to, I want to prioritize your praise on reading graphs, maps, and trees if we can. But I also want you guys to, if you have rhetorical praise that we need to prioritize some of your rhetorical praises. If you have some that you think are particularly resonant with either the conversation we're having with the emergence of the digital humanities or with graphs, maps, or trees, let's definitely make sure that we do that. And so I'll reorganize things a little bit so we can have so we can get those rhetorical praises in earlier. But I also want to make sure that we pull emergence of the digital humanities up a little bit more. So yay for such minor technical problems. Yay, you guys didn't get thrown off, and yay that you were able to come back on. And I hope you guys didn't. I didn't give you too many pictures of me staring at you and going up, my nose all up in your face. So anyway, okay. Any final words? All right, guys. Thank you so much. See you next week, and let me know if you need me. And Bob, give me an email, and anybody else, and we'll get this straightened out. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Will do. Thank you very much.